Hello learners, I welcome you all to the last segment of the 36th lecture. In the first two segments, we looked at the factual matrix of the case and how the tribunal decided certain questions of fact. So now in this lecture, we will be looking at the merits of the dispute. So in this case, as we know that the claimant had alleged a violation of fair and equitable treatment of Canada Barbados BIT, he had also alleged a violation of full protection and security clause under Canada Barbados BIT. He had also stated that Barbados had expropriated his investment. So these are the three violations of Canada Barbados BIT that was relevant for this particular case. Okay, so what had happened with regard to FET? With regard to FET, the key contention that Peter Allard had taken was that there was legitimate expectation that he had with regard to how that investment that he would operate the investment and all of that, and that legitimate expectation was actually frustrated by the by Barbados. And how did he get these legitimate expectation? Then he referred to the 1986 plan, then the 1996 letter, 1995 letter by Mark Cummins, who was the chief town officer and all of that. So that letter, 1986 plan, then there was certain reply that he had got from certain officials of Barbados. All of these reply from the officials and all of that amounted to a rise of legitimate expectation on the part of Peter Allard. That is what he stated, right? So then the tribunal initially looked into how it will decide the question of violation of FET clause. For deciding the question of violation of FET clause, it will be looking at whether there was a specific representation made by the government, the host state. Did the investor rely on it? Was there a breach of that representation after the investor had relied on it? So this is how the tribunal had sort of decided the scope of the FET clause, and this is how it will proceed. Because Peter Allard had stated that because of these things that he had listed out from 1986 plan to the letter that he had got from various Barbados officials and all of that gave rise to a legitimate expectation on his part that he will be able to successfully carry out his investment, right? So now what we see here is, now that he had stated that these are the things that he relied on, the tribunal went ahead and see whether they were general representation or they were specific representation. Then we look at 1986 plan, that was a general plan. So that was a general representation. And even with regard to the Mark Cummins letter also, the tribunal stated that his letter was worded in such a way that it is conditional in nature, and therefore that is also something that falls within a general representation. In fact, Peter Allard had actually referred to two ARA reports. So what are these ARA reports? Actually, when in 1996 itself, when Barbados decided to sort of develop an ecotourism in Graham Hall Swamp, what it did was it appointed a consulting firm, which was ARA firm. So that ARA firm had to sort of submit a report with regard to the feasibility of ecotourism in that area and all of that. So this consulting firm had submitted two reports, ARA first report, ARA second report. So that is something Peter Allard stated that I relied on those two ARA reports, and that amounts to rise of legitimate expectation. Right. So with regard to those two ARA reports also, the tribunal stated that those were the reports of consulting firms and that cannot be attributed to Barbados. And with regard to other reply that it had got from the public officials, then the tribunal stated that those were also very general representation. So there were no specific representation in this particular case, but then the tribunal went ahead and looked at whether he had relied on these representation. So in fact, one of the things that he had mentioned under this, under the question of, or under the concept of legitimate expectation was, he also expected that the sluice gate would be operated properly and managed properly, and that would in fact benefit his investment. But if we see that how did he get to know, or how did he have a legitimate expectation that the sluice gate would be operated or managed properly? Then at that point of time he referred to the approval of amended EMP. Remember the environmental management plan that he had to submit? The first time when he submitted, that was rejected, then he submitted a second one which was approved. So he felt that, Peter Allard felt that the approval of the second EMP sort of relates to the fact that sluice gate would be operated in a particular way by Barbados. So that's what he said. Since the second report was approved, he felt that the Barbados had assumed, or Barbados taken an obligation that they would operate sluice gate in a proper way, and that is how he had this legitimate expectation in the context of what Barbados would do in terms of sluice gate, right? So then that also the tribunal stated that an approval of environmental management plan is something that only means that whether whatever you proposed to do, is it in consonance with the environmental principles and all of that in terms of environmental impact. So that cannot give rise to a legitimate expectation that the sluice gate will be managed in a particular way. So then whether did the investor rely on these representation? For that, the tribunal found that actually his initial decision to invest was actually made well before the dates of these documents that he said that gave rise to legitimate expectation on his part, right? So the tribunal stated that it seems that he has not actually relied on these representation because his initial decision to invest in Barbados predates the some of these documents, except with the exception of 1986 plan, right? So that is how the tribunal stated that Peter Allard did not show any evidence with regard to how his legitimate expectations were violated. So there has to be specific representation, then the investor should have relied on the specific representation. Only then the tribunal would find a violation of FET clause under Barbados Canada BIT, and that was not present in this case, right? So this is how the FET clause was decided. Moving on to the next issue of full protection and security clause. This is a very interesting argument that the claimant had taken. So under full protection and security clause, there is some sort of due diligence that is present on the part of host state. It should not let any physical harm to occur to the investment. So claimant stated that when there is already a due diligence aspect that is present on the part of Barbados to protect his investment, and that due diligence gets a higher standard of care because Barbados is a party to Ramsar Convention, so it had to respect the provisions of Ramsar Convention. So the duty that Barbados owes to the investor heightens because the sanctuary is on the wetlands, right? So that is how the claimant interestingly took an argument that by letting the pollutants to pollutants to invade the sanctuary, and by not enforcing Marine Pollution Control Act, what Barbados had done was Barbados had not exercised its care that it gets under FPS standard, full protection and security standard, and therefore that has resulted in violation of FPS provision under Barbados Canada BIT. This is how it's Peter Allard had argued that how they failed to enforce certain provisions of the domestic environmental law, and how they mismanaged the sluice gate operations, and how they will allow certain pollutions to happen and pollutions to enter the sanctuary. So that had in fact resulted in environmental degradation of the sanctuary, and by doing this, Barbados has violated the FPS standard. This is what the claimant has claimed. So as per claimant, the Allard, ideally what should the Barbados should have done? So as per the claimant Allard, he states that Barbados was supposed to do these following things. Only if it does these following things, only then we can say that it has exercised the due diligence that it was supposed to do under an FPS clause. So what are those things that the Barbados ideally should have done as per Allard? So Allard stated that Barbados should have repaired the sluice gate and established a regular schedule for water exchange between the sanctuary and the sea. And Barbados should have reconfigured government-owned ditches so that the storm water could be directed to the sea through the sluice gate. And Barbados should have allowed contaminated storm water to flow to the Barbados South Coast sewage plant and be pumped out to sea in off-peak hours. And Barbados should have notified the sanctuary when a failure occurred at the sewage plant. And Barbados should have used adjacent lands to intercept and treat storm water in retention basins. And Barbados should have prohibited adjacent commercial properties from discharging wastewaters. So, as per Allard, Barbados should have done all of these, only then it would meet the standard of diligence that it has under FPS clause. But Barbados refuted to all of these. Barbados stated that we had done everything that we could do. Barbados had constituted a committee, Graham Hall Stewardship Committee, and the committee comprised of government officials and private people and all of that, and they constantly met and took decision. They in fact coordinated with the government whenever some sort of an action had to happen with regard to sluice gate. And Barbados also stated that sluice gate, the management of sluice gate or the operation of sluice gate was not as an easy task. If at all, whatever Allard is asking from the Barbados, if they do that, then there's also possibility of flooding the adjacent lands as well. And then if Barbados wants, if Barbados wants to replace the gate or take some other action like that, then it had to undertake a heavy hydrology study and all of that. Some scientific study had to take place. Only then the removal of the gate or replacement of the gate, all of these could be thought about also. So then the tribunal was also convinced with regard to the establishment of this committee and the actions of these committee, how they coordinated with Barbados with regard to the management of sluice gate. So it stated that Barbados has actually done whatever it wants to do, and the fact that Barbados is signatory to Convention of Biological Diversity and Ramsar Convention actually does not affect the operation of FPS clause under a BIT. Then on the facts of the case, since Barbados has done these measures and there were other risk flooding of adjacent lands and all of that, the tribunal stated that there is no violation of FPS clause in under Canada-Barbados BIT also. This is how the second claim was also decided. Moving on to the final claim, that is with regard to the expropriation claim. Here, Peter Allard made a claim that Barbados has expropriated his investment not by physically confiscating his land or sanctuary, but how? But by taking away his ability to run an ecotourism center. So that is how he stated that there was an expropriation of his investment. So how did that expropriation of the investment happen as per Allard? Because he stated that mismanagement of sluice gate, the change in zoning plan and all of that, as well as actually Allard had a very interesting observation. He said that in 2005 they nominated Graham Hall Swamp as Ramsar site under Ramsar Convention. So now his sanctuary could only be operated as a conservation center. He cannot do anything about it. He cannot have any other commercial activities here. So on the one hand, they've nominated the Graham Hall Swamp as a Ramsar site. On the other hand, they did not manage the sluice gate properly. They did not get the they had made abrupt changes to the zoning plan, and all of these, then they did not enforce the Marine Pollution Control Act and all of that. So with regard to Marine Pollution Control Act, while deciding FPS, Barbados made a very interesting comment. It stated that if Barbados had a complaint, then Barbados ideally should have raised it at that point of time and not raise it before the dispute. So that is something not in good faith, because it did never raised a complaint under the Marine Pollution Control Act before. It had complaints with regard to sluice gate management, and then Barbados did, remember there was two times actually, they used heavy machinery to intervene with the operation of sluice gate. That all had happened because Allard had complained, the claimant had complained. but the claimant had never complained with regard to the enforcement of Marine Pollution Control Board. So here the Barbados stated that you cannot bring it bring that during the dispute. That this is not in good faith. Ideally, you should have brought it back then. So that was also one of the factors the tribunal relied on by saying there's no violation of FPS clause. So even under expropriation provision also, it stated that Marine Pollution Control Act was not properly enforced, and mismanagement of sluice gate and zoning changes and all of these contributed to his deprivation of operating his investment. So that way it has expropriated, Barbados had expropriated his investment. So here also what Barbados stated was, he is in full control of his investment. In fact, Alaz is still undertaking a commercial operation. What was a commercial operation? He had turned the visitor center into a cafe and he was running it at the time of the investment. And also he was apparently renting out the provision for weddings and other social activities. So commercial operations are still happening. So it's in full control. So therefore, there's no expropriation in this particular case. But the tribunal stated that he did not anyway prove, Alad did not anyway prove that there was environmental degradation due to the actions of Barbados, and if at all there was, since there is no environmental degradation due to the actions of Barbados, his claim of expropriation also fails. So since he could not prove environmental degradation because of an action of Barbados, there was no expropriation of his investment by Barbados. But the tribunal also stated that this man is a visionary. He had made investment in an ecotourism sector and all of that, but just because he had made an investment for any sort of an ecological risk and all of that, BIT cannot be used for claiming compensation. That is how a tribunal decided. When tribunals actually sympathized with his vision or agreed with his vision and all of that, but they did not find any violation of FET clause, FPS clause or expropriation clause. So this is how this case is decided. So in the next lecture, we will look at one other case where an environmental measure was challenged. Thank you.